if you don't know who these people are. This is Lynn Hardy. Line editor for the Rivers of London role-playing game, but used to work on Call of Cthulhu, and in fact, used to work on Call of Cthulhu, including working on a lot of the Gaslight stuff before Lynn became full-time on Rivers, which is why Lynn's in the Cthulhu panel. This is Keris MacDonald. As you know, Keris came in to be the line editor for Cthulhu by Gaslight. This is Brian Holland, he's from Australia. Brian's job is to tell me off by not saying too much. This is Paul Fricker. About 16 years ago, me and him worked on a role-playing game you've not heard of. I'm Mike Mason. What
do you do?
I'm officially the creative director of Call of Cthulhu. Paul is an associate editor for Call of Cthulhu.
And what are we all doing here? We're going to talk about.
That's an open-ended question, Brian.
It is. What are we all doing? Sorry,
too
specific. We're going to talk about what's new in Cthulhu. Starting with the most recent thing. Now, hopefully this button's good. I wanted to test the idea that people were already. So we're going to spoil it. Right, so Keris, this book is out. It is the most new thing for Cthulhu. If people in this room weren't involved with selling out this copy in the next room, what are some things in this book that people should know about if they haven't picked it up yet or haven't done Gaslight yet?
Right. Well, obviously. Hopefully you all know that we've already got the Investigator's Guide, which covers a lot of the historical background and stuff. So we made a decision not to duplicate any information across the two volumes. So we've got the history, say, of the Golden Dawn in the Investigator's book, and then in the Keeper's book, what you've got is all the secrets and the mythos stuff and the Golden Dawn's magic system and astral monsters that may appear optionally in your game. So the idea is that the Keeper's Guide contains all the stuff that the player is not supposed to know in advance, and it's just for, your secrets. So you can launch anything you like on them. Some of it is mythos stuff, some of it is more Victorian stuff, but the sort of nasty underbelly side. And there are two really good scenarios in there as well to get your Gaslight campaign going.
What are the scenarios?
I'm sorry?
What are the scenarios?
What are the scenarios? Well, we have Penelope Love's 4B masterwork has been remastered for this, and we have, you're going to tell them about this one, aren't you?
That's what I can remember, because this is a very long time ago, because you think I started working on Rivers in 2019. We've been developing Gaslight for a while, and yeah, we talked about it, we split it into the two books. Mike and I decided that was a good idea, so we had a player-facing book that you could just give to the players and they weren't going to learn anything that spoiled what you were going to do to them, basically, and the Keeper book that had all the secrets, as Keris has said. So I started working with Mike Lay on Mike Mason's suggestion, it's like too many mics, to develop a scenario called Oranges and Lemons. So that's my actually major contribution to the Keeper's Guide book, because most of the stuff I actually wrote is in the Investigator's book. So yes, it's an interesting scenario, it's a fun scenario, but that is my major contribution, and it's 7 or 8 years ago, so I can't remember that much about it now. Other than it was great fun to work on at the time.
Oranges and Lemons is set in the East End of London, so it's good for if you've got working class investigators, and then the 4B masterwork works for middle class or posher investigators, but there's also an option put in it so that your working class investigators can infiltrate this rather nice house in the sort of west of London and do their thing there instead. So you've got options about using different sorts of investigators across the two different scenarios.
Your name's not on the
No, it's not.
Good words there. Anything?
I think Keris and Lynn have said most of it. I mean, the key thing about it is it's a like most of the keeper-oriented stuff that we do, we try and make it a toolkit. And so there's stuff you can run straight out of the book, like the scenarios. But there's a whole chapter on the mythos in Britain in the Victorian era. But it doesn't regurgitate all the stuff you find in the rule book or the stuff you find in the Malice on Throne, because you've already got that, or there's no point. So it's just a kind of overview, particularly aimed at newer keepers. So there's other stuff there for people. There's some new tomes, new stuff like that. There's we bought back the Martians from the original version of Gaslight and put together a kind of a timeline of the Martian invasion based on War of the Worlds. So if you want to run a non-mythos War of the Worlds, you can. Or you can run it with mythos, and guess who's actually behind it? Probably the Migo, pulling the strings. So the idea, you can make it into whatever you want it to be. And so we provide the different kind of pieces of bits of information that you can connect to or disassociate depending on your preference, whether to pump it up, pump it down, or whatever it may be. Yeah, so that's the intention with these books, and they are the core starting point to jump into the Gaslight line, because obviously they do kind of stand alone, because the core rules are in the player's book. You don't actually need the keeper rule book if you are starting out. I imagine that if you are here in this room now, you've probably already got the keeper book, and you're not new to the game necessarily. However, if you were new to the game, it's a nice way into the game without too much of a barrier. That was the idea.
Shotgun, has anyone not played the new Cthulhu by Gaslight? So just quickly, Keris, if someone's apprehension is maybe like, I'm not sure what the setting would add that the 1920s wouldn't, what do you think is a unique thing about the Gaslight setting that helps with the Cthulhu vibes of stuff?
That helps with the Cthulhu vibes.
Of stuff, yeah. Well, you're a unique element to explore in a role-playing session that, say, your classic 1920s won't. Ignoring the fact that obviously they're very different if you know human history, but
Yeah. There's a big gap between the sort of 1920s classic era. I guess it's sort of the start really of the modern mindset. Before First World War, you got the Victorian era, and life is very different. The way people look at things is very different. And the big difference is the class system and how that works. I'll do a workshop tomorrow on how the different classes interact and how they feel about each other. But that is a real, if you're into role-playing your characters, that's a huge difference about how the game will feel and how it will run, and what sort of skills you'll need to bring to bear to access different parts of society if you're doing an investigation. So that's, I think, the vast difference. And also, obviously there's a big technological difference. You're in the age of steam. If you want to go a bit towards steampunk, especially if you're playing pulp, works really well with pulp to do that sort of thing. And it is a world where there's just an expectation if you're British, because this is a very much British set of rules, that you are the hub of this incredible empire, and you can travel anywhere across the globe, and you expect as a Briton, obviously, to have a certain standing, and you also expect to have the right to poke your noses into places where it would really probably be wiser not to.
Right, we will have time for questions at the end, so if you have any questions about Gaslight, just keep that in mind. The next slide is something no one's seen yet, so if people on the panel actually want to flip your chairs around. I apologise if it doesn't work yet.
Oh, wow.
Did you think that I'd forgotten you? Perhaps you hoped I had. From my palace, across that great lake, through the sky, beyond Your world has changed. Marvels of science and technology spread like so many tendrils through the human throng. You are connected like you never have been before. And I return to you now to show you wonders beyond belief. Call of Cthulhu, the Sutra of Pale Leaves, Twin Suns Rising, takes the original game of investigative horror to an all-new setting, 1980s Japan. Containing 3 modular scenarios, extensive information on the setting, and an all-new take on the infamous mythos entity, the King in Yellow. The Sutra of Pale Leaves, Twin Suns Rising, is the ultimate sourcebook for your next Call of Cthulhu campaign. Available soon in hardcover and PDF from Chaosium.com and your friendly local game store.
So Mike, what was that about?
So it's a book about how to go to Japan and the King in Yellow. If you didn't know already. This is a really strange book in that it's everything it could be. It's a campaign, and it's modular, and you can play it as a one-shot. All of the scenarios in the book is one-shots. You can connect them all together to play one big campaign, or you could just take that scenario and play those two. And in whatever permutation you want, that will work. So it's very modular. There are numerous connecting threads to make a campaign. And equally, you can ignore those and make it a one-shot, as I say. So that's kind of the format. And if you imagine each scenario focuses on a different aspect of Japanese culture in the 1980s. So for instance, it would be no surprise that there's a chapter about manga and anime and that kind of thing. There's a chapter on video games of the era, multi-user dungeons and things like that, and other things. That's your kind of broad headline. But Keris did a lot of work in the book, so I shall hand over to Keris.
Yeah, we were working with a group called the Sons of the Singularity, who are based in Japan.
Who did the
Files.
Satsuma Files, and
It's Andrew Logan Montgomery and people like that. So yeah, so they wrote it, and we were working with them. And in fact, they did all the art and everything as well. So it's very Japanese based. It is very high concept. If you like The King in Yellow because of his sort of reality-bending, unusual take on the mythos, you are going to love this. It is a new look at the King in Yellow. It's almost you could say it's sort of taking the mythos and completely reframing it in some ways. I don't want to do any spoilers because
I would characterise it by there's horror, but basically the big dial on the front of the book says weird.
Yes.
It's turning the weird dial up. The horror is still there, but the weird dial is what you're really turning up in this kind of take on the this particular strand of the mythos.
Yeah, and The King in Yellow is one of my favourite, probably my favourite mythos gods, so I love this one. It is a really, really good campaign.
Given this is something that's relatively new, if anyone has any questions, let's raise your hand. Any questions about this book, the setting, anything like that? Yeah, you said.
Well, 1980s Japan does have a car that runs on orange juice. Don't remember that story.
There is to jump off that and, as an answer. There is obviously we expect you all to have full intimate knowledge of all the details of 1980 Japan before you run this. So what we've done is there is a really cool kind of overview in chapter 1, not only of the structure of how you can manipulate the the material, the book, the scenarios, the characters into whatever you want to meld them into. There's obviously a kind of an overview of the period in Japan, what was going on, but there's also a tremendous amount about this different take on the King in Yellow and the magic involved, the corruption mechanics. These are all kind of new stuff. So if you come away, you play scenarios, and then what else do you do? Well, you've got all this background stuff you can now use to fuel your own adventures and strands and plots and things like that.
And your investigators do not need to be Japanese to play it, so there's an in for foreign investigators who are living in Japan at the time. And it doesn't need to be the same investigators all the way through. You can sort of swap and change.
So you mentioned that it's like a weird dial is turned up quite a... Oh, sorry, another question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the archetype, because I did a 3-month placement at university in Japan in 1986. So I'm
saw your fault!
I'm kind of interested in what the character archetypes are going to look like, or are they just standard ones?
Occupations and such, I mean.
Occupations.
There's a range, because as Kerry said,
There are pre-gens, we have a bunch of pre-gens.
Yeah.
and they go from police officers through teachers to medical staff, as well as your kind of standard investigator.
Foreign exchange student.
It's kind of a weird place to be in.
And obviously you can bring your own characters to it, or create characters.
Yeah. I mean, being a white guy with a ponytail in the mid-80s in Japan was quite unusual. So.
Sorry, you're not on this one.
I'm not.
There's a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, considering like the popularity of Cthulhu in Japan, is it more like a Western take on Japan, or is it more like a translation of the way they play Cthulhu in Japan to a Western audience? Which way?
It's a strange hybrid. The writers, the team of writers, of which some are Americans who live in Japan and have lived in Japan for a long time, as well as Japanese authors who obviously live in Japan. So you've got this kind of hybrid of both a kind of a slightly Western take and authentic kind of, I'm Japanese, I've lived in Japan all my life, take as well, melded together. So, but obviously what we wanted to make sure that it was accessible as possible to people who aren't Japanese or don't live in Japan, or have never lived in Japan, and so on and so on. So it's very accessible, but it's got some real depth to it in terms of the actual cultural stuff and what I'm trying to say, characterise is it's not a barrier to entry if you know nothing. Yeah, if you weren't alive in the 80s or you never.
We'd like to get Paul talk. Hey, let's get a Paul Brigger. Paul, what are we looking at? What is this?
What are we looking at? We're looking at a scout facing off against Cthulhuoid monsters. Known as Campfire Tales. So Campfire Tales, a new setting for Call of Cthulhu. Think Stranger Things, possibly meets a bit of Scooby-Doo. We're looking at playing children. We're playing scouts in the 1920s. So you start off perhaps as an 11-year-old in the scouting organisation, and it takes you through various. The book contains 4 scenarios which interlink as the West Haven campaign in North America, and you collect badges, because that's what you do as a scout, right? Now, is there anybody who is a member of the Crafty Crows? So I ran a game yesterday, and that was it. So you have your little scout troop, and they have a thank you. They have a call, and that's essentially that sort of investigator organisation which we have in standard Call of Cthulhu, right? But in Campfire Tales, that's your scout pack, your scout group. And part of my sort of envisaging of this is you start off as 11-year-olds together, and then you go through these adventures
To the age of around
18. You become an adult, and you've got your scout troop, but now you transition to being adult investigators. And what do? Master and Arthur.
So we do have some sample pages here. Because you mentioned that you said just like scouts are the real.
Yeah.
Allegedly, you collect badges.
Indeed.
So how does that work with with the game mechanics?
So you're all Wayfarer Scouts, which is this badge here. So you all get Wayfarer Scout badge. And each badge has got a little rule, a little tweak to the game. So if you're a Wayfarer Scout, which you will be through the whole of the book, you can spend luck points to save your friend when he does something stupid. I mean, not that Mike would ever do that. But to save your friend, you can spend luck points on other people's behalf if they're in your scout troop. And you also begin as a wanderer, then you progress to being a rover, you progress to being a ranger, so they're like your ranks in the scouting organisation.
Look, there's round badges. What are the round badges?
What are the round badges? They're like your achievement badges. So you've got badges in boating, climbing, cycling, things like that. And each one of those maybe gives you, when you get it, it maybe gives you like plus 10% to, let's say, climbing. But also during the game, each session, each adventure, you can tick that badge once to get a bonus die on a climbing roll, or something related to climbing. So with each of the badges, it's got a little tweak into the game. So it adds a little kind of scouting feel to the game, and gives you a little bit more agency in what you can do.
And it means players want to just get more badges. Get more stuff.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Given the fact you're playing children and you're collecting badges, it all sounds adorable. Is this as deadly a game as your standard Call of Cthulhu?
No.
Oh.
There's still horror, but we're dealing with kids here. So a couple of big changes. We don't have sanity, we have cool. So you roll to keep your cool. And that has a slightly different effect. Also, we've imported the rule from Pulp Cthulhu, in that if you've got 30 points of luck to spend, when the monster comes out and squishes you, you can spend all your luck points to sort of say, well, some reason why you managed to survive. You know, he squashed me down into the mud, but he didn't kill me. He charged off, and I picked myself out of the mud afterwards. You know, it's just so you've got that much more survivable thing. So terrible things still happen. You can dealt with it in a different way. You can die.
You can die.
And you can die. Mike likes to bring the silver lining.
Yeah. And is this a standalone book, or you still need to keep a guide to play it? Can you play it with quick start rules? Just because you're describing a lot of fundamental changes.
So you still need to keep a rule book, but it's giving you variation on character creation, scout investigator creation, and a few rules tweaks.
And it can also link into a wider thing, can't it? Because there's an option to where is West Haven?
Oh, in Lovecraft Country. So, but you could, if you wanted, maybe rather than playing in West Haven, you could play it in Arkham.
And there's an analogy for everything in West Haven or Arkham. So if you want to base it in Arkham, it's all done for you as well. So you can do either.
Question here?
Yeah, this is obviously it's not as lonely as it sounds. So given it's the 1920s scouting movement, how does it deal with gender?
It kind of, well, it embraces whatever you like. Yeah. So it's not just Boy Scouts. I say Boy Scouts. It's not Boy Scouts.
It's not Boy Scouts.
It's just Scouts.
Yeah.
So it's open to.
Yeah, that wasn't a loaded question.
No, that's a good question. Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions about Scouts? Campfire Tales?
Well, kind of leading into it, Mike said just before we let into this, he actually said none of us are getting any younger. It caused me to look around. Which is quite interesting in terms of your design or the plan in terms of masks, big campaigns, small campaigns, and then you led into this. And I kind of wondered, what is your succession planning, if you like? You're thinking about bringing new into the game, and I was wondering, is this part of this? Is this part of the plan?
The best succession planning is to make really cool books and games. If they're really cool. No matter what age you are, you're going to have fun. Yeah? So I imagine, because you make a book about 11-year-old scouts, yeah? And part of your brain, well, that's a book for 11-year-olds and teenagers. Remember when you were that age, what was the last thing you wanted to be? Was you. You wanted to play an adult. Yeah? So I imagine young people coming in the game will just come in and get the starter set and play regular adults, detectives, running around with guns, shooting things, yeah? And people your age will play scouts who are 11-year-olds with your rose-tinted spectacles on, remembering such a magical time of my youth when we used to play in the woods and so forth. So it works in any combination. But the ultimate seriousness plan is, yes, there is always an eye onto the next generation, because you have to. But to do that is we just want to make really cool games. Because a cool game sounds like it's not too deep.
Are we going to get collectible my first ritual badges?
My first ritual. That's it. Yeah.
Great. Given that all the badges like relate to skills broadly, is there a Mythos badge?
Just for you, John, we'll make one.
Yes?
Is Jackson Elias a scout?
Was it? No.
Yeah.
Will you make the badges as collectibles?
I was waiting for that question.
Yeah.
We've debated this long and hard. We really want to be able to say that here's a pack of sewn badges for you to sew on everything. Yeah? and then we had dreams of like, here's all the badges as a set of stickers that you can, you've got the climbing badge, here's a sticker to your bed, you can stick it on your couch, and all these wonderful things. And obviously, they all are really hard to actually do well. And also the practicality of trying to fit badges that look half decent onto a on one page is impossible because they're just too big. Anyway. We've got various permutations. Unfortunately, we're not a fabric company, and our expertise is not in manufacturing sewing materials. However, it is an area that we are kind of looking at how we can explore that with somebody who does do that, who may be interested in kind of making some, a limited set, as it were, at some point, maybe, but don't.
The danger with stickers is the old danger for those of us who remember Letraset. You would buy those sheets of Letraset. There would always be letters that you ended up with left that you never ever used, but you'd have to buy several million sheets of Letraset just to get all the E's and T's. So there's always a danger of producing sticker sheets that's going to use a whole load of badges that nobody actually ever gets around to getting.
I'm inventing a new gaming concept. Now, you heard it first here, yeah? So you remember Badge for the Gathering? Collectible stickers, yeah? And there'll be like the best one gives you the best bonus is really rare, yeah? So the whole set you mine.
So you can look for Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales, likely Q4 of this year. So we've got some stuff we're talking about for so probably early to mid next year. That's just me being safe there. Everyone remembers the Arkham book? Yeah. Everyone have the Show of hands who doesn't have the Arkham book, so I can show me. What are you doing? You have to leave now. Alright, so there is, has anyone heard of the other town called Innsmouth? Yeah. Alright, there you have it. Alright, well Mike's going to tell you about it. Alright. We've got a couple of very early things to share. So if you just want to give a quick overview of what the book will be, and then we'll show you stuff.
Okay, it's about Innsmouth. That's what the record will be. It's a follow-on from Arkham. It's like the old version, as in like the Book of Arkham is like the old version. It's the description of the town of Innsmouth. It's a description of the various NPCs and characters, event, history, secret history. That's all, what you would expect, because that kind of stuff is in the original. Obviously, it's been revised from the ground up. Some of the old stuff is still in there. A lot of new stuff is in there, and a lot more material is in there in terms of it's fleshed out, like I did with Arkham. You have to really flesh it out so it makes your job easier. You haven't got to, if you want to create things on the fly, you can, but you don't have to because it's all there for you. But there is still plenty of room for you to develop your material there. That's all in the book as a given, I guess. The other stuff that is brand new in there is a whole kind of section chapter on, deep ones. Who are the deep ones, really? What are they after? What are the different sorts of deep ones that you've never, not seen before?
It's like when they had aliens and there were like 15 different types of
Yeah,
exactly. Everyone loved that, right?
Like humanity, I decided like humanity, deep ones don't all act and do the same and look the same all the time. They often depict exactly the same all the time and doing exactly the same thing all the time. So I tried to put a bit more diversity for deep ones in there. But more importantly than that is a range of very different potential goals for what do the deep ones want, what are they doing, why are they doing it. And it ranges from the standard, plot standard of they're bad dudes and they're going to destroy us all, so that's the default, you know. However, there are very different versions of the deep ones in there as well, for you to decide whether you want to go with that or not. If not, you just ignore it, or you take the bits you want to make the kind of deep one goals that you wish. And then obviously there's also about the esoteric order of Dagon, what's going on there, blah, 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 blah. So you've got all this, you know, stuff that builds out deep one, because what I wanted to do, the danger in Innsmouth is it could be a kind of one-trick pony, yeah? You go there once, you have a fight with the deep ones and you get chased out and you never go back, because they've got a shot. And you can do that, that's fine, if that's what you want to do. However, I wanted to try and give it a broader potential. And obviously there's advice in there for saying, well, don't do it all in one go, you know, space it out. If you've got characters based in Arkham, then when they first go to Innsmouth, it's nothing to do with the deep ones. They're going to go and maybe talk to somebody and just get some information they need for somebody in Arkham. And they just go around this creepy town, they're not quite sure what's going on, and leave. And then the next time they find out a little bit more, and then trying by they realise there's actually stuff happening in Innsmouth, and that draws you into the whole kind of Innsmouth story, potentially. But you've got links with Arkham with Asenath Waite, who's from Innsmouth, who's in Arkham, and vice versa, and all these things going on. So there's a lot of cross-pollination for you to use as you will. You know, like Arkham, there's lots of different strands you can go down depending on where your group wants to go, whether they follow the witches, whether they follow the deep ones, whether they go ghoul tunneling or whatever it is. There's all these different things you can do. And you have to
well, when the players are following these people or whatever, are they following them through a particular street? Like, how am I a player supposed to know what Innsmouth looks like?
Well, you have a map, clearly.
Right, okay.
You clearly have a map.
Yeah.
So, there'll be, like Arkham, there'll be a player-facing map, there'll be a keeper-facing map, and there'll also be posters from the book. So this is a bit of to kind of show you a bit of work in progress. Now we've got two people who are actually working on the Innsmouth maps. There's Matt Ryan, who did a lot of, or did the Arkham maps. You know, Matt does a lot of the, is doing the 2D stuff. But we're also working with John Malcolm, who's an expert in all this isometric stuff. And John's here. Say hello, John.
Hello.
So this is one of John's pieces of work. John, do you want to just say a little what this is?
I use the 3D program Blender, which is fantastic and it's free. And my job's just to make Matt's job just that wee bit easier, because he's got a really big job ahead of him to do this view. There's about 500 or 600 buildings in Innsmouth. So I'm trying to do a wee bit of his work for him, save him just a wee bit of drawing.
And there's another image we can show of how they combine. So if you look at the 2D map, that's Matt's kind of work in progress Innsmouth map. But then if you start to zoom in, you can see the plotting that John's doing.
There we go.
And obviously you're looking at the various buildings, but I want to point out things like this, which are really important. Because Innsmouth is really flat. In most versions of Innsmouth you've ever seen before by anyone, it's flat. Innsmouth isn't flat. There's a whole river going through with all these waterfalls. You see these 3D waterfalls here? So, and these hills here. Innsmouth is on a hill. You go down to the harbour. So we're trying to emphasise the fact that it isn't flat. There's all these kind of steep streets, which is more interesting, and also creepier and all that. And Matt and John are kind of visualising this in a way that I can't. I can only describe so much in text. You need to see it. And so I'm really pleased with this kind of stuff. I think it looks, as I say, this is early work in progress, but I think you can see how awesome it's going to be as a player and a visualisation of the whole place.
I was lucky as well that, see all them wee symbols Matt's used, they're all based on real historical buildings, and they were named in Matt's file, so I could just go and model the real historical building and you know, make some variants of and stuff.
Me and Matt, we were arguing the other day because we were going over the map, checking the kind of size of the houses compared to the text. That building's far too big, it's only such and such. He said, no, it's based on an actual one. It's actually the premises, of literally what you read about. Oh, I'll show you.
Will this become a digital asset that we can get with the book? Or
That would be good, wouldn't it? Yes. Well, sort of.
It's a similar question. I was just going to ask, same sort of question, but your mind's obviously in this space in terms of how your artwork's evolving and your offer's evolving. So therefore, we get the lovely PDFs that you supply on the Chaosium site. Is that next step happening in terms of your virtual offer to support the books? So we see these kind of 3D maps.
Look, at the minute, the difficulty we have is platforms. Because we could share you the kind of the end result file, but you would need specific software, which you haven't got. Let's face it. Some of you might have, but the majority will not have. I mean, just think how much trouble we had about getting a character sheet to open in multiple PDFs. Yeah, this is way beyond that in terms of things. So being honest with you, I don't think we're there yet. I would dearly love to make a isometric 3D, zoomable, move around, do what you like with map. Yes, available to you. I can't because the infrastructure is not yet there. It will be in time, like everything else. Once upon a time, we used to have to print out character sheets and write on them. We have to do it.
I think it's a comfort that your wife knowing that Chaosium is in this space and thinking about it.
I mean, definitely something we want to do, but we've got to wait till everything catches up really with the ability to do it. Because I can't make something available that only one person out of 50 can actually use because it's not particularly there. But
I've got the Arkham book, which we're using as part of our character. I reckon we're playing the Order of the Stone. Just started playing the Order of the Stone. Absolutely love the Arkham book. Timeline-wise, it's sort of set after the raid on Innsmouth. So is the Innsmouth book then going to kind of follow that same time?
So Arkham is normally set in 1922. The raid of Innsmouth takes place in the winter of 1928, early 29. So it's like 8 years, 1922, because it syncs with Arkham exactly. However, just like Arkham, where in the Arkham book, if you've not seen it yet, there are a little section where I call it Look to the Future, which is a little Easter egg if you know what it means. And we'll tell you what will happen in the future. So this person will eventually, in about 10 years' time, go on an Arctic expedition and things will happen. So there's a little
unless they happen to meet the investigator.
Unless they meet the investigator, then all makes sense. They just shoot everyone in the face, don't they? So for Innsmouth, going back to that, there is a description of the raid.
Right.
There is what happens, and there's some advice and ideas of how you might get to the raid. And controversially, there's also advice about never having the raid happen.
Cool.
Because just because the Lovecraft said it happened, doesn't mean you have to make it happen.
Well, none of the papers mentioned it.
Exactly. So there is a whole bunch of stuff in there about saying, well, what if the raid didn't happen? What does that mean?
It's a fake.
That's
what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
No, that's really cool.
So there's so again, like I said, it's like a toolkit. I tried to give you options.
Yeah.
And one of the options hopefully is one that you like and your players will like, and that's one you'll go with.
Yeah, and having done copy editing on a couple of these chapters, because I'm allowed to sneak back into the fold every now and again, having copy edited a couple of the chapters as Mike talked about, I think you're going to really enjoy the twists and spins he's put on things, because it does really enrich the playability of that setting. And some of the options for what the deep ones are up to are really cool and a lot of fun. I was very pleased to see them. Because it just gives you that, just to refresh things and change things up a little bit and surprise your players, because players think they know what deep ones are.
Fishmen, right?
Fishmen, yeah. You get to totally mess with them which is always fun as a GM, isn't it? We like messing with our players. So I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised with what Mike's done with the setting. There's some really, really lovely bits in there for you to play with.
Are there any questions about anything you've seen so far, or any other questions you might have for any of the 4 wonderful people we've got up here?
Don't be shy. You can also ask questions that we're not allowed to answer.
Yeah.
I asked for a question.
No, it's good.
So I believe there was a Dunwich book.
Yeah. So this is not a secret. Yeah. Kay's been originally back in the very early 90s did Arkham, Innsmouth, Dunwich, and Kingsport. Yeah. And they also did a Miskatonic University sourcebook. Yeah. No surprise, we're doing all of those. Yeah. The difference is I'm also doing more. So obviously Arkham done, Innsmouth, you know, it's coming very soon. And then in order, and this may change, so don't hold me to it, but I'll probably do Kingsport next, and then Dunwich last, because I want to save the horror of Dunwich to last. But interspersed with this is a book of scenarios for Arkham, book of scenarios for Innsmouth, and actually they're the next things, all being well, that I'm actually going to do. So before I actually get to Kingsport, I want to get some scenarios out now as well. Not that there aren't already lots of scenarios out for Arkham, certainly, already out there, but it would be nice to kind of throw a few new ones in the mix as well. So that's what's coming. And I did mention an MU source book, that we have that. And on a podcast once, I'm not allowed to say, but on a podcast once, I did mention that there might be a chance we might do a campaign where you play MU students from day 1 right through to graduation.
That's not a time pass.
That's not a time pass. Yeah, and that is written, but undeveloped. So still got a lot of work to do. So there's none of these books I'm talking, other than the scenario books, which are all being well, fingers crossed, the next things I would be talking about next year. All the other stuff is down the pipe.
Just to temper everyone's expectations, written but undeveloped means Mike has a post-it note with 5 dots. Just assume you're making it's going to hit print and that one's developed.
Absolutely.
All right. I've got another question for Paul, just going back to the slides. So I realised I asked Karis the question, I guess I forgot to ask to you.
Oh, okay.
What do you think is, in the Scouts book, what is the most, your personal favourite, unique way of looking at the mythos through the eyes of these 11-year-old children? In a way that you couldn't maybe get in your traditional Call of Cthulhu setting?
What's the most unique thing about it?
What's something you like about it? Don't say the bad thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just the bond between the children. I think it's just that thing of, so one of the aspects is that on your character sheet, one of the little things you have in your background is trusted adult. There's somebody you can go to that will believe you. Whereas if you go to anybody else, any other adult, and say, oh, there's a big monster down the sewer and it like tried to eat me, they'll be like, yeah, go and do your chores. You know, go and chop some wood, go and wash the dishes, whatever. They don't believe you. But so that's kind of inbuilt in the game. You've got one trusted adult, but if you upset them, then that relationship sours, and you've lost that as well. So that's just a little aspect of being a child that kind of comes into the game.
There's one other aspect that you probably forgotten is there's rival scout groups.
Oh yeah. Ooh. There's a stumbling moose squad.
You don't like those? So they will do anything to stop you doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And
even in the middle of a mythology investigation, well, they don't care. They're going to screw your life. So.
Is there a scout group name generator?
Yeah, it's called the Players.
A question here.
Going with the picture of the skatebook, I see a dog. Is there going to be a system in for loyal four-legged companions?
There's a scout badge, Brian, called Animal Friendship, which allows you to, you get 10% points on your animal handling, but that's kind of, that's not very exciting. But what it does do is the old lassie thing. What's that, boy? What's that? There's somebody stuck in the well, so you can kind of understand like one little message from them.
You can understand one simple message or concept that a dog, parentheses, or similar, possibly a cat. Anti-cat sentiment.
Yeah, I know. I'll yeah.
A lot of people scratching their faces and nervous to put their hand up. Come on, the gentleman here in the Miskatonic Purple t-shirt's doing all the heavy lifting. Anyone else got any other questions?
Oh, come on, the ones at the back are being very quiet.
We have already setting in Japan, so where you think about doing Japan setting but in other epochs, so like feudal Japan or something like that?
I referred to Brian's answer earlier. If we sell a ton of these Japan set, Sutra books, that we may do more. But at the minute, it's not necessarily on the cards. But there's so many other things that we already said yes to, kind of thing, that we're just working our way through the list, which goes on over more than one page. So, yeah.
You remember the extent of my market research when we decided to do this, right?
Oh,
I said, what is it the nerds love? Japan. So, yeah, that's a goer.
Have we still got over 10 years worth of stuff in the back catalogue?
Well,
we're still trying to work through. Yeah.
Since we're going to Innsmouth and Arkham and I know you released Berlin, any plans to re-release Cairo?
Ooh, there's always a plan.
Sure.
But you need a book, and so we are working on a book that is set in Cairo. I can't tell you any more, but it's not a guide, but it is set in Cairo. So a lot of the time, one of the things more generally, moving out this for a second, one of the things I'm very conscious of is I like gaming content in books, and so where we can gamify setting material, I find that is more value. I hope that's more value to people, because obviously you can just go on Wikipedia and read about, Egypt in 1923 if you wish, or pick up a book or whatever. And that will tell you far more than we can ever fit in a source book. So there is a little bit of that, being conscious of, doing your own interest and research as well, whilst also accepting that we need to give you some background, we need to give you some context, we need to give you some setting material to make it easy for you, so it's not a hard job. You don't want, most of the time, what do I say all the time? Make the keeper's life easy. Yeah? My mantra is make keeper's life easy. The way we set our books out, how they're formatted, how we present information, it's all based on trying to make you as keepers an easier proposition for you to run this material. Because what we don't want to do is make it harder. So, coming back round is to say, certain settings really kind of cry out for a source book of some kind, setting book material or whatever. Other ones don't necessarily need it if we've got really cool scenarios we can set there, and within the context of the scenario it provides you a little sidebar about that and a little sidebar about that, where you're getting a snippet, not a big essay, but just what you need at that point to play the scenario. It's a bit of a balance, I guess.
Yeah, no, I apologize.
Just a bit of a business model question, this one. I was talking to Quest Porter, and one of the biggest barriers I've got, certainly as a BTT user as well as playing face-to-face, is that ability to switch from BTTs, because I've put the money in one, bought some books, licensed products, and now if I want to go to another, you've got to potentially buy those books again. What kind of discussions are happening in Chaosium, if any, where we can move those licenses from platform to platform, so that it gives us that choice, ability to move across the BTTs and make a decision?
Well, the first thing to do is those greedy, muddy-grubbing, BTT runners but it's very hard for us to, certainly I think anyone above the pay grade of everybody sitting here can answer that question. As I said to the RuneQuest panel earlier, if you want features like that on various BTTs, the best thing you can do is actually email all of those people and say, hey, this is something I would like to do, because the reality is it's not going to happen unless they think it's going to be worth it for them to actually implement that. So yeah, I agree. I think it would be great. I mean, in a perfect world, you should be able to go to chaosium.com. You can get your Sutra, you get it in hardcover, leatherette, PDF, or BTT, and the BTT package would work on whatever BTT thing you want.
Yeah, I mean that's what we like, but I mean we've got to be realistic and look at music.
Yeah.
I can't move my Apple Music to Amazon. I wish I could, but I can't. I've got to buy it all again. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But like Brian says, I think it's just a consumer directive thing that, you know, certainly we will advocate for it. However, they're not going to actually listen to us because we're not, you know, we're not some huge.
I will say one way to play whatever you want on whatever BTT is if you just buy the book. And then you can just play it on
the book or PDF.
Or the PDF, yeah. Anything else? Oh, pardon me, sorry.
Yeah, there originally sounded like a wish list. You've obviously invested quite a lot of money in the production of Gaslight, and it always felt like it's been quite popular. As in, this is what, the third version of Gaslight, I think, throughout the years. Is there plans to expand the range into a campaign or anything like that, supporting it? And then secondly, I need more Regency. It's been one of my favourite.
Thank you. You have no idea how hard I have to twist his arm to get him to let him.
I genuinely didn't think you lot were in the mood for Regency. And I went, oh, we'll do one book, thinking no one's going to buy it. And
I've never seen Bridgerton.
I've never seen Bridgerton. Completely over my head. I watch horror films. And then Lynn persuaded me, and we, I put a budget together, and it might work. And then you all bought it and played the hell out of it. It's like, wow, that's great. So we have, we're not going mad, but we do have a few little irons in the fire for, potential follow-ons.
And to tide you over, if you haven't read, there are a couple of very, very good scenarios on the
Yes, written by some of the people who were lurking on the back.
That's a fantastic plug to then say, look, as you can see, we're in terms of Chaosium terms, we are the kind of largest creative team in the company, but it's a very small company. We're not Wizards of the Coast with 65 creatives working in a room and doing that, which is not that. We've always been a very small company. We're independent in that sense. So we can only do so much at any one time. So we move, we try and get books out as quickly as we can, and we're pretty good at it, but it still takes time. So that's why the repository is brilliant, because it fills in that gap and it makes all this community content available. So Reach is a fantastic example. We've had the chance to do one book, but you can go on the repository and get multiple things, like Dark Ages, it's exactly the same, There's only so much capability we have, so that's why the repository is fantastic, and if you've not been on there yet, please go and have a look at it at the very least. There's some brilliant titles on there, and some brilliant adventures and source material, so go and use it. Just in general, it's really cool.
Is there any more books that you do, the Black Knight books, in terms of scenarios?
In terms of scenarios? Fictionalized Call of Cthulhu stuff. It's something we intend to continue to look at ways we can do that.
There's one at the back, I think.
Following on from the question about Gaslight campaign, is there any news on Christmas?
Yes, it's coming. Okay, look, let's be sneaky, I'm going to say it's the next thing Keris is doing. Keris, you're allowed to say one thing without one.
Is there anyone else in the room that could talk about it?
There's a Gaslight screen pack on its way.
Oh, I forgot about that. You talk about that. We said we were going to talk about it, I just don't have any pictures of it, that's all. So please, tell me more about the Gaslight screen, because that's also likely coming this year.
Yes, because that's all done, ready to go. Beautiful new screen pack, beautiful artwork, and all the Gaslight version of the rules on the back. Obviously, very handy. I've found in every scenario that I've run. So, and there's going to be a reference book, there's going to be a scenario pack.
And you can jump at this point. One very recent decision.
I've not told you this yet, you might not know this.
That Carrie doesn't know yet, sorry Carrie, now we know what we can put in the pack, we are now able to budget it against print costs and distribution costs. And we basically worked out, because we got a little bit mad with the 2 scenarios, as in they're pretty big scenarios, that it makes the pack too expensive for you guys. That we don't want to overprice it. Yeah. So we're going to take the scenarios out, so it'll all be play aids and cool stuff, and big poster maps and very useful maps and things like that. That will be the keeper screen pack. The 2 scenarios I've just removed will follow almost immediately as a separate book. Okay. Small book, so it won't be a high cost item, but it will make it more affordable. So if you want to not buy it all in one go, you can spread the cost if you want to buy it that way. Otherwise, the actual price of the one thing is, you would kind of go, wait, what? How much? We don't want to do that. We want to make it.
So that's our time as well. So I'm just going to let everybody on the panel just talk. If there's anything else you're doing this weekend, like a thing like this, or anything special that you want to mention, Lynn, you got anything else on your schedule?
No, after this I'm done.
Oh, okay. Lynn is leading immediately after.
Basically, David made sure that everything I did was Friday and today, so I can just sort of like sit there and be social and talk to people.
Oh, okay. Well, you can do that then.
I can. I'm going to do
great.
that.
Where do you hang out? Just out
Out the back or in the bar, so yeah.
Harris?
We've got a scenario tonight with the Miskatonic Playhouse. Mike Mayers, how do you pronounce that? And I'm doing a thing on class in Gaslight.
Oh, excellent.
What time is it tomorrow?
12, I think, irritatingly. 12 to 1.
We have a Writing for Cthulhu workshop.
Now.
Right now.
Yeah, we're in that now.
Oh, okay, that's right. I'm going to leave.
Yeah,
not actually right now. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you.